Harivedacharya Astatara Satas Simanis Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi. See, Srimati Radharani Part 1. Are the colors good? Now on my screen, it's a great image. Good colors?
Yes, I think it's the shade this side. Yeah. And this side. Yes.
Yes, it's good?
Yes.
Okay, glad to hear it. It's beautiful. Photograph. Srimati Radharani. Her appearance day is coming very soon. So we're planning to prepare ourselves for Srimati Radharani's appearance day by spending our classes largely on Srimati Radharani. Here's a little menu. 6 classes related to Radharani, starting with this evening. Who is Srimati Radharani, Radha Tattva, and Radha's appearance pastimes, and then other things, childhood pastimes, Shamakund, Suryakund, many nice things. So let's begin with a verse that's in the introductory verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Many of you know this verse. We hear it so many times. I've heard it so many times. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Ladini Shakti Rasmat Ekatmanavapi Bhuvi Pura Deha Bedam Gatau Tau Chaityan Yaktam Prakatam Aduna Tad Dvayam Chaikyam Aptam Radha Bhava Duti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Sarupam. This is the verse composed by Sarup Damodar, indicating one of many esoteric teachings about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being none different than Radha Krishna. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shakti Asmat. Radha Krishna Pranaya. Let's go to the translation. The loving affairs of Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of Ladini Shakti, the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Ekatmana, although Radha and Krishna are Eka, they are one in their identity. For a Deha Vedam Vitautau. Previously they separated themselves. It's one of those events, it's not an event in time, but it's separated themselves. Now, Chaityan Yaktam, these two transcendental identities have again united. It's not like these are chronological events. It takes, anyway. Is that a child or a cat? Cat child. Yours?
Yes, brother.
Yeah, you can tell. Okay. Now these two transcendental identities, that's Radha and Krishna, two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bowed down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna himself in both the Radha Bhava and the duty Subhaditam, both the ecstasy, the sentiment, and the duty, the complexion, the luster of Srimati Radharani, bold and complexioned Radha. So two Pura Deha Veda, two forms. Radha, Krishna, two forms, although one entity. Ekatmanava people be. Two forms, one entity. Two forms, one entity. Now manifest in this way. So this is the way that the Chaitanya Charitamrita is constructed. There's some preliminary verses, and then those preliminary verses are expanded later on in other chapters, and we're going to see the expanded version of this verse by Sri Damodar. That he is revealing some truths about Lord Chaitanya, and truths about Lord Chaitanya means truths about Radha and Krishna. So here's the verse from Adi Lila chapter 4. Radha Krishna Eka Atma Dvi Deha Hari Anyoni Vilasa Rasa Asvadana Kari. Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they've assumed two bodies.
They enjoy each other, tasting the mellows of love. It's a big mystery, isn't it? They're one entity in two bodies enjoying each other's company. It's quite a mystery. We discussed something yesterday that this reminds me of. Yesterday, with the Chinese devotees, there was a discussion about Krishna's killing of Shishupal. And in relation to Krishna's killing of Shishupal, before that happened, Yudhishthir was honoring Krishna in many very profound and beautiful ways. But he, in a short manner, he was indicating Krishna is the supreme. You're the supreme controller. You're in charge of everything. Yet you give something for us to do, and you don't even have to ask us to do because you're everything is going on by your potencies. There isn't something that goes on that's outside of your potencies, and therefore there's nothing you have to order us to do. But you're very kind and you give us some service to do. And the commentary was saying like this. It's very simple. There's two things. This is just not the way it was said, but it's the way that Prabhupada said. There are two things. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing. There's no void in the creation of God. So the Parabrahman doesn't need to order anybody because his potencies just move according to his indication. In other words, it's just Leela. Profound Leela. Profound Leela. We're going to hear shortly about different potencies of Krishna, but all those potencies are acting under his direction. There's some tiny free will connected with living entities. But anyway, this is Radha and Krishna are one and the same, but they have assumed two bodies. This is Krishnadas Kaviraj expanding on what Srup Damodar wrote and quoted in the first chapter of Adi Lila. Here's Prabhupada's purport. Another beautiful image of Radharani. The two transcendentalists, Radha and Krishna, are a puzzle to materialists. The description of Radha and Krishna from the diary of Srila Sarup Damodar Goswami is a condensed explanation, but one needs great spiritual insight to understand the mystery of these two personalities, which Krishnadas Kaviraj proceeds to do. A nice little chart. This is a good chart. Krishna's unlimited potencies. There's three divisions. On the left side is internal potency. There are different ways of saying his internal potency. Antaranga Shakti is one of those ways. Sarup Shakti is another one of those ways. Chit Shakti is another one of those ways. Those four terms that say the same thing. His internal potency, then his external potency, Bahiranga Shakti. And then, what's the third one? Marginal, right. Makes sense. Internal, external, and what's the third one? In between. Tatashta, Jiva Shakti, or marginal potency. Now, we're going to see that one on the left there, the internal potency, has its three divisions. So Chit Shakti has its three divisions. Sandhini Shakti, and the letters are small, but Krishna's aspect of eternal existence, the Sat aspect, or Sandhini aspect. His mother, father, his own body, his abode, his paraphernalia, and you name it. Everything that's of the spiritual world. This Sandhini Shakti is expanded elaborately in the section about Balaram, because Balaram is the presiding personality of this Sandhini Shakti. He serves through the agency of his Sandhini potency, and he manifests all these things. So the Sat feature, or the eternal manifestation feature of all these things. Then, Sambit, Krishna's aspect of cognizance, the knowledge potency by which the Lord knows himself and causes others to know him. Sambit, potency. Sambit, Sandhini, Sambit, and then Ladini. Very good. And so Balaram is the presiding person of the Sandhini Shakti. Krishna is the presiding person of the Sambit Shakti, and we know who is in charge of the Ladini Shakti, or she is Radharani, Krishna's aspect of transcendental bliss. Very nice chart. So we're speaking about the Ladini Shakti aspect personified of Krishna's Chit Shakti, or Sarup Shakti, or internal potency, or Antaranga Shakti. So it gets a little, terminology can sometimes be a little confusing. That's okay. So continuing with Adi Leela chapter 4. Ladimira Sara Prema Prema Sara Bhava Bhavera Parama Kashta Nama Mahabhava. The essence of the Ladini potency is love of God. The essence of love of God is emotion, bhava. And the ultimate development of emotion is mahabhava. So guess who possesses mahabhava? I think you all know already. There's text 68. Mahabhava Sarup Shri Radha Thakurani Sarvaguna Kani Krishna Kanta Shiromani. Shri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of Mahabhava. She is the repository of all good qualities and the crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. This is Radha Tattva. Krishna Prema Bhavita Yanra Chitendriya Kaya Krishna Nija Shakti Radha Kridara Sahaya. Her mind, senses, and body are steeped in love for Krishna. She is Krishna's own energy, and she helps him in his pastimes. Nadika Hayena Krishnera Pranaya Vikara Swarup Shakti Ladini Nama Yanhara. She, Mati Radhika, is the transformation of Krishna's love. She is his internal energy called the Ladini. So we heard where that position of that Ladini is within his Chit Shakti. Ladini Karaya Krishne Ananda Svadana Ladinira Dvara Kare Bhaktera Prosana Poshana. That Ladini energy gives Krishna's pleasure, and Poshana, it nourishes his devotees. Nice word, Poshana. It nourishes his devotees. Bhaktera Poshana. Ladini Shakti. And continuing, Krishna Kanta Gane Gana Deki Trividha Prakara Eka Lakshmi Gana Pure Mahishi Gana Ara Vrajana Gana Rupa Ara Kanta Gana Sara Shri Radhika Haite Kanta Ganera Vistara. The beloved consorts of Lord Krishna are of three kinds: the goddesses of fortune, the queens, and the milkmaids of Vraja, who are the foremost of all. These consorts all proceed from Sri Radhika. Far out, huh? Far out. She's very special personality. So this is Vaikuntha, that's the goddesses of fortune. Dwaraka, that's the queens. And the gopis, milkmaids of Braja, who are the foremost of all. All three proceed from Radhika. Very important personality, certainly in Krishna Tattva. Avatari Krishna Yaiche Kare Avatara Ankshini Radha Hite Tina Ganera Vistara. Just as the fountainhead Lord Krishna is the cause of all incarnations, so Shri Radha is the cause of all these consorts. Govinda Nandini Radha, Govinda Mohini, Govinda Sarvasva, Sarva Kanti Kanta Shiromani. Radha is the one who gives pleasure to Govinda, and she is also the enchantress of Govinda. She is the be-all and end-all of Govinda, and the crest jewel of all his consorts. So she has a very special position, and that's the first part of this evening's presentation. The Radharani's position, and now we're going to hear of some of the various ways that Radharani makes her appearance in this world. And we're going to discuss 4 different categories of Radharani's appearance in this world. And the first one is described, this is taken from Madhavananda's latest Bindu magazine. I've heard this narration before many, many, many times, but I didn't know what the source of it was. I just trusted the source. But it's Ramananda Roy. You know who is Ramananda Roy? So you know who is Swarup Damodar? You know who is Lord Chaitanya? Lord Chaitanya's two chief associates in Puri. In Krishna Lila, it's Vishakha and Lalita. Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. Intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya. And here is Padyavali description, says a collection of prayers by Ramananda Roy, published in the latest Bindu magazine, about Radharani's appearance. So I'm not going to stumble through the text here. We'll just read the translation. There's an image of Rishabhanu, who is finding Srimati Radharani on a lotus flower along the bank of the river Jamuna. So we'll go back a little bit before this. Vrishabhanu and Nanda Maharaj were dear friends. And they were close to the same age, and they married around the same time. And so Vrishabhanu's wife Kirtida and Nanda's wife Yashoda also became very, very, very close friends, naturally so. And both of them had desire for children, but no children came. And they tried various methods, yagyas and thises and that's. No children came. Nanda made the suggestion. Vrishabhanu thought it was a very good suggestion. Let's go to the other side of the river Jamuna, to Gokul, and undergo austerities there, and maybe we'll have better fortune in bearing children. So their ancestral home, they left. Varshana and Nandagram, they left. They went to the east side of the river Jamuna. And the east side of the river Jamuna, the place where Vrishabhanu and Kirtida settled, was a place, very, very sweet place, known as Raval. So at that time, one of the branches of the river Jamuna ran right along by the side of Vrishabhanu's home. And you can go there, you can see where the riverbed was, and where those same structures were along the side of a riverbed for bathing and so on. So one morning, early in the morning, before the sun rose, he went to take his morning bath. And when he went to take his morning bath, he saw something that he had never seen before in the river Jamuna. And there was a golden glow. As he was wading out into the river, when he got closer, the golden glow wasn't just a golden glow, it was a lotus on top of which was a golden, effulgent child, Radharani. One day, as Vrishabhanu, in his language here, it's Bhikabhanu, arrived upon the Jamuna's banks, after having been moving around here and there during a royal expedition. He saw a lotus flower resplendent like the rays of the sun floating down the stream. Lotus flower, in this version, floating down the stream. So he was very curious. He went close to see what's this golden glow. And as he got closer, this is what he saw. Seeing the lotus, his mind became full of bliss, and yet he simultaneously fell into deep despair. He thought and spoke aloud, "How can this divine lotus be brought to the shore?" Radharani was in the center of the lotus, as you can see from the illustrations. Although his servants heard what the king had uttered, no one could speak. Ramananda Roy aspires to serve his feet. In his internal vision, Roy Ramananda asks the king, "Shall I fetch this lotus?" He wants to be a service to Vrishabhanu. And in great bliss, Maharaj Vrishabhanu swiftly dismounted from his steed and jumped into the Jamuna. Swimming amid waves that seemed to touch the sky, he caught hold of the lotus and brought it to the shore. And lo and behold, within that lotus was a golden child. Ramananda Roy speaks of Radha's appearance and how the world is now crowned with success by beholding the vision of Radhika. What can possibly compare to the beauty of celebration of the appearance of Srimati Radharani, Vrishabhanu's abode? I think it should be in Vrishabhanu's abode. So there's the celebration. So when the narration that I've accustomed to hearing is, it's still the dark of night, and he brought the child to Kirtida, that let us accept this child as our daughter. So she wasn't conceived in the way that a child is normally conceived. She was born in a most unusual way on a lotus flower, and he accepted. And Kirtida was happy. And so here's some local villagers nearby coming and paying their respects to the newborn child. And then the rest of the version is not in Ramananda Roy's writings, but I'm accustomed to hearing. At around this time, Narada Muni began to consider, Krishna has recently appeared, right? Just a short time ago. That means Radharani must also be appearing. So he decided he wanted to have darshan of both Radha and Krishna in their child form. So he paid respects to Nanda Maharaj and took blessings of Lord Krishna and his darshan. So he began searching for a female child. You know, sannyasis do this sometimes. They're ready to give blessings to the newborn children in a family. So he went here and there and was searching for, do you have a newborn child in your home? And he was striking out. There were newborn children, but it wasn't Radharani. And so the way the narration I've heard is he went to Vrishabhanu's home and he asked, do you have any children? So he introduced Nanda Maharaj to Radharani's elder brother. What's the name of Radharani's elder brother? Sridham. Sridham. So, oh, blessing Sridham. You're a nice boy. And so he was ready to leave. And Vrishabhanu considered, maybe I better tell him, because there is a small child, but she's blind, deaf, and dumb. But maybe because he's a sannyasi and a great sadhu, maybe he can do something. So he said, wait, before you go, we do have a small child, but she's blind, deaf, and dumb. So he took her into the room because Radharani wasn't opening her eyes because she didn't want to see anything but Krishna. She didn't want to speak anything but Krishna. And she didn't want to respond to any sound other than Krishna. As soon as Narada saw little Radharani, blind, deaf, and dumb Radharani, he was in ecstasy. He said, I know some special mantras. Please give me some time, because they're private mantras. I have to say these mantras in private. And he closed the door and he worshipped Radharani to his heart's content. And then he said, the mantras I said didn't work. But I have a recommendation for you. What's that? In honor of Radharani's appearance, have a big festival. And invite all the people in Gokul. Be sure to invite Nanda and Jasoda. And while you're at it, make sure they bring their new child, Krishna. And I'm sure everything will turn out to be very nice. So you know the story. So, meanwhile, Narada wasn't there for this event, but when everybody was gathered together, enjoying each other's company, little Krishna toddled his way over to where Radharani was lying in her crib, blind, deaf, and dumb, with her eyes closed. And as soon as Krishna crawled to the side of Radharani's crib, she opened her eyes. She called out very loudly, like children will sometimes do. And everyone heard her calling out. They came running. They were very happy because she was happy to see Krishna. She didn't want to see anything but Krishna. So she's now very happy. This is part of one of Radharani's appearance stories, one of 4. The second is very similar, but Radharani appears not in Raval, but at Vrishabhanukund at Varsana. Very similar, but not in the river Jamuna, but in Vrishabhanukund. A third narration, Prabhupada personally narrated this in a Radhastami class in Montreal. And it's a description, the way the description goes in the recording. You can try to catch it. He described Vrishabhanu was plowing the field and preparing for a yajna, and as he was plowing the field, preparing for the yajna, very similar to Sita's appearance. As he was plowing the field came a golden child. There you see at the very bottom, that's where the plowing is, and in the furrow there appeared Radharani. So he went back and showed the child to his good wife, Kirtida, and they accepted, this is the Lord's arrangement for us to have a child. And that's the third. And now the fourth one is really complicated. Really complicated. So I'm going to have to read much of it because I spent some time going over it, and it's really complicated. It's the narration is from Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhava. Act 1, Scene 1, Lalita Madhava. It's how Lalita Madhava begins. It's the Radharani's appearance. And it begins where Agastya detected in Vindia Hills, was in a competitive mood, very proud and competitive mood towards the Himalayas. He was trying to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So Agastya went and paid his visit, and Vindia was requested to bow down and stay down until he returned. He didn't return. So Vindia obeyed, didn't violate Agastya, but he was in this competitive mood. And so Vindia started undergoing severe austerities. This is described in Lalita Madhava. And through the result of those great austerities, Lord Brahma appeared. And Brahma asked, what benediction would you like? And he wanted a benediction, Vindia wanted a benediction, that he would have a son-in-law that would be able to defeat the Himalayas' son-in-law. So, who's Himalayas' son-in-law? Lord Shiva. But Himavati, in her second verse, Sita, she became, not Sita, she became the son of the Himalaya mountains. So now I'm going to read, because it's complicated. So not only the benediction was given by Lord Brahma. No, who is narrating all this? The person that's narrating all this is Purnamasi. You know who is Purnamasi? She's Yogamaya personified. Yogamaya personified. Purnamasi, Yogamaya personified. Purnamasi is narrating to her granddaughter. So who is Purnamasi's grandson, excuse me. Purnamasi's, who is the son of Sandipani Muni? Sandipani Muni is her son. Sandipani Muni. Okay, but I'm just going to make sure, because there's some newer people here. There's a lot of names. Sandipani Muni was Krishna's guru, right? He went to Sandipani Muni's school. Sandipani Muni had a mother. And Sandipani Muni had a son and a daughter. Maybe more than one son, but at least one son, Madhumangal. So Madhumangal was the grandson of Purnamasi and the son of Sandipani Muni. And so Purnamasi is speaking to Gargi, and Gargi is Sandipani Muni's daughter. So son and daughter, Gargi, and Madhumangal, son and daughter. So Purnamasi is describing Radharani's appearance and a whole lot of other things to Gargi. So Brahma gave the following benediction to Vindia. Oh, Mount Vindia, to fulfill your desire, you will have 2 daughters. So Radharani is one of the 2 daughters of Vindia Hills, because the benediction is Vindia wanted a son-in-law who would defeat Himalaya's son-in-law. So you'll have 2 daughters that will give you a son-in-law. One of the ones would give him a son-in-law who would defeat Lord Shiva, and whose virtues would fill the world with wonder. So according to Rupa Goswami's Lalitamata, Radharani is the daughter of the Vindia Hills, based upon a blessing given by Lord Brahma to the Vindia Hills. So then her granddaughter, or Gargi, asks, how did Radharani go from Mount Vindia to Gokul? Good question. It's a big distance. And the answer? Putana. Putana kidnapped Radharani from the Vindia Hills. Not only Radharani, but the other daughter. The other daughter was Chandravali. Gargi. Witches that steal children generally eat their victims. Radharani was very fortunate to be saved. Purnamasi. Kamsa ordered her to kill any extraordinary small boys and to kidnap any small girls. So she didn't eat, she just kidnapped from Vindia 2 girls. Gargi. Why did the king ask her to do those 2 things? He was pushed by the words of Devaki's demigoddess daughter. Devaki, the 8th child of Devaki, got switched out. And it became, Yogamaya became Durga. And Durga, Devaki's demigoddess daughter, said to Kamsa, ready? The same person who in your previous birth severed your head with a chakra raised in battle. The same person who the sages know as he whose two lotus feet are worshipped by the demigods. The same person who pleases his loving devotees by showering them with oceans of nectar and bliss. The same person who is the root from which the universe has sprouted, has now appeared in this world at the time of the moon's rising, although it was midnight. And Durga also said, today or the day after, 8 sublimely sweet Shaktis will appear on this earth. 2 sisters. It's complicated. 2 sisters who are like great palaces of beautiful transcendental qualities will also appear. 8 Shaktis plus 2 sisters. When he, Krishna, defeats Shiva, Lord Krishna, the King of Kings, will accept the hand of both the girls in marriage. Gargi. What happened to the second sister? That was Radharani. No, there's a second sister. Who's the second sister? Chandravali. Purnamasi answers. When Vindia's chief priest chanted the demon-killing mantras, so Putana came and kidnapped the 2 girls. They're doing a yagya, and she kidnapped the 2 girls. So the priest chanted a mantra that kills the target. Putana heard it. Putana's heart became struck with fear as she was hastily flying over Vidarbha province, like Vidarbha Sutta, right? Who's Vidarbha? Rukmini. Vidarbha Sutta, Rukmini. As Putana was flying over Vidarbha province, the first of her victims dropped from her hand and fell into a river's current. Gargi. My father, Sandipani Muni, is omniscient. Why then has he said that as a result of the benediction granted by Durvasa Muni, Srimati Radharani appeared from King Vrishabhanu's chest? Complicated. Durvasa Muni pronounced something. She, Radharani, would appear from King Vrishabhanu's chest. Purnamasi. Here's the answer. Requested by Brahma, listen, Lord Hari's Yogamaya potency removed these 2 infant girls from the wombs of the wives of Chandrabhanu and Vrishabhanu. Yogamaya did this at the request of Brahma and placed them in the womb of Vindya's wife. Rupa Goswami, right? Gargi, did the 2 fathers know what happened? Purnamasi, certainly they understood. Why would Durvasa Muni not help them? Now that sentence I don't understand. Why would Durvasa Muni not help them? Because Durvasa Muni pronounced it would come from the chest of Vrishabhanu. So I don't know how Durvasa Muni helped them to understand what was going on, I guess. How do you know all this? Purnamasi, I learned it from Narada Muni, my spiritual master, which has also made me attached to Radha. Very involved. Gargi. So this is grandmother and granddaughter. Gargi. Is it true that when the witch was killed, that's Putana, you took Radha from her lap? Purnamasi. I not only took Radha, but 5 other girls also. Really? Who were they? And she gives their names. The 5 other girls that Purnamasi took from the lap of Putana when Putana was killed. First, Lalita. Radha's moon-faced friend Lalita. Then some friends of Chandravali. The beautiful friend of Chandravali, Padma. Bhadra, who acts auspiciously. Shaibya, and splendid and cheerful Shama. That's the 5 girls, along with Radha, were taken from Putana when Putana was killed by Purnamasi, Yogamaya. Yogamaya. How were these girls placed among the gopis? And the short is different of the girls were given by Purnamasi to different couples to take care of, like adopted children. I gave these 5 infant girls to 5 gopis in different parts of Vrindavan. In a secret place, I happily gave virtuous Radha to Yashoda's nurse Mukhara, and said, "Oh, elderly one, here is your son-in-law, Vrishabhanu's daughter." So Mukhara is the mother-in-law of Vrishabhanu, but she also served as Yashoda's nurse, Mukhara. Gargi. This must be the way Radha's second close friend Vishakha appeared in Gokula. No. Jatila found her floating in the Jamuna. Gargi, I did not know that. Who found the Vindia's first daughter as she was floating in the river's current? Remember the first daughter that fell from the hand when Putana was being cursed? It fell in Vidarbha province. King Bhishmaka found that daughter. King Bhishmaka. So who was Bhishmaka? He's the father of Rukmini. Gargi, alas, the cruelty of fate, who has separated these 2 sisters, Radha and Chandravali. My daughter, fate then reunited them. In this way, fate's mercy may be seen. Gargi, how did this happen? Ready? Chandravali was the granddaughter of Karala. Don't know who that is. Jambavan, who lived in the caves of Govardhan Hill and the Vindia Hills, kidnapped the 5-year-old Chandravali and forcibly took her from Kundina city. He did this on the orders of goddess Durga. Who was staying at that time in the Vindia Hills, because Vindia was the the father of these two girls, and Chandravali was one of the two girls. So Jambavan was given an order or request to bring Chandravali, one of the daughters, from the Kundina city. So now she's over here in Vrindavan. Then the translator makes a note. This goddess Durga is the daughter of Yashoda. Daughter of Yashoda, the female child by the side of Yashoda that was brought into the prison house of Kamsa, and Kamsa tried to kill, and it became Durga. Same. The daughter of Yashoda. After Maharaj Vasudeva brought her back to Mathura, and after King Kamsa unsuccessfully tried to kill her, she escaped. And one of the places she escaped to was the Vindia Hills. And in the Vindia Hills, she made this request to Jambavan, who brought Chandravali back to Vrindavan from Bhishmaka's place to be now in the care of her father, Gargi. This is the last for this session. I'll just say it, and then I'll read it, and then I'll say it again. The teaching that we're getting here is each of the gopis have their spiritual counterpart as queens of Krishna. They're separately manifest, but they have their similar identities or expansions of one another. As we heard, Radharani is the source of expansions of all of them. So the gopis are her expansions, and these queens are their expansions. And the pastime of how all this takes place is being recounted in the Lita Madhava. So here's the paragraph, and I'll summarize it again. She talks to herself, aside, parentheses. I've heard from my father's mouth, to her father's Sandipani Muni, that although the gopis, headed by Chandrabanu's daughter Chandravali, and the Dwarka queens headed by Bhishmaka's daughter Rukmini, they're counterparts, right? Chandravali, the right wing gopi, and Rukmini, the right wing queen, are expansions of the same spiritual potency. I heard this from my father. Nevertheless, their forms are separate and distinct. Now it is said that with the aid of Yogamaya potency, each gopi is identical with a specific queen. And each pair of gopi and queen is a single person in a single form. It must be so. Later, I shall perhaps understand it. What can I understand now on these confidential matters? So, minus all the detail, we just heard from the Lita Madhava that Radharani was the daughter of Vindia Hills, taken from the chest of Rishabhanu by Yogamaya at the request of Brahma, because Brahma made a pledge to Vindia Hills. So he was the father, Rishabhanu, of Radharani, but entrusted to Vindhya and taking birth as the daughter of Vindia Hills, etc. And their expansions, which are themselves, but with a different mood, became Krishna's queens in Dwarka. Now, just yesterday there was this discussion. We had a class with the Chinese devotees. It took almost 2 hours and 45 minutes. You left. It was really long. But one of the questions had to do with what we're talking about. And somehow the person who was asking the questions had heard from a not proper source. Here's a detail. When Krishna freed the kings that were imprisoned, no. When Krishna freed the princesses that were imprisoned by Narakasura, the verse says 16,000. In the commentary, Sridhar Swami says it was actually 16,100. And he quotes Vishnu Purana to verify. So sometimes numbers are just kind of rounded off. Sometimes that happens. The more specific is it was 16,100, and that's how we get 16,108. And then the 8, there's some details of how the 8 became Krishna's queens, starting with Rukmini, and then Jambavati, and then Satyabhama. Then there's a whole chapter with the other 5 queens, so 5 plus 3 is 8. And then the 16,100. 16,100. And 8. So 16,108, and there's I spent about 2 hours today answering this lady's question that wanted to know, how does this work out? Because when she started asking her question 3 times, I said the premise of the question is misleading, because she kept saying things that were just not from our scriptures. She heard somewhere, I don't know what, some class. 16,100 plus 8. And they, according to Vishnu Purana and according to many other references, I'll send the document around. Who do I send it to? Do I send it to you and you then circulate it? I can convert it into a PDF. It includes what I'm going to send you is what we just read, this last sentence. I'll read it again. This is Gargi's realization. I've heard it from my father's mouth that although the gopis headed by Chandrabanu's daughter Chandravali and the Dwarka queens headed by Bhishmaka's daughter Rukmini are expansions of the same spiritual potency, nevertheless, these forms are separate and distinct. Now it is said that with the aid of the Yogamaya's potency, each gopi is identical with a specific queen, and each pair of gopi and queen is a single person in a single form. It must be so. Later I shall perhaps understand it. It's a mystery. It's a mystery upon a mystery upon mystery, and layers of mystery keep going. It gets more and more mysterious. But going back to something that we heard yesterday, commentary by Vishwanath, Krishna has unlimited and inconceivable potencies. And so he doesn't need to do anything. Because how his potencies move is he just desires. Icha, Shakti. He just desires. He doesn't even have to say. He just desires. They know what he wants, and they do what he wants. It's like the Damodar Leela. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation. In the Damodar Leela, Mother Yasoda wasn't able to bind Krishna. Why? Because Krishna was exhibiting 2 of his potencies. His Swarup Shakti and something Shakti, forget. He wanted to go. He wanted to go back to steal more butter. He just, she couldn't bind him. But when she continued with devotion, then he withdrew those potencies and exhibited his Kripa Shakti. He didn't have to say anything to his potencies. They knew what he wanted. They just did what he wanted. That's how it works. That's how the internal potency works. That chart, those of you who came a little later, there's a nice chart. His internal potency has these different parts. And most confidential of all is the Hladini Shakti, and she's the best. But these other potencies, they do things that Krishna wants. So all these different pastimes, it's just pastimes. So one of the questions at the end of that class last night, a classic one, when I hear all these things, I have a hard time because it sounds like mythology. It sounds like fiction. So what do I do? Well, understand that Krishna is unlimited, inconceivable potencies. And he's just playing with his potencies. And sometimes it's likened to waves in a river. And the waves in the river is just water flowing. And sometimes a wave goes up. And sometimes it stays up for some time. Sometimes another wave comes and hits that wave, and sometimes from the other side another wave hits that wave, and then it subsides, and then another wave comes, and the river keeps flowing. So Krishna's pastimes is like that, just flowing of his various potencies as he's enjoying different things in different ways with different persons according to their regard for him. That's our life as devotees, is to marvel at the supreme, all-attractive personality of Godhead and his different potencies. And so Radharani's appearance day is a fantastic time to marvel at his Hladini potency. And we just spent some time, some of the different ways by which she appears. It's not a cookie-cutter thing by any means. It's exactly as she so desires, as he desires, she desires. Here's a photograph of the temple in Ravel. Probably many of you have been there. There's a nice ISKCON bus over on the right side, but on the center, that's the temple. Very quiet place. And along the side of that temple is where the river Jamuna used to flow, where Vishwabhanu found Radharani floating on a lotus flower. Here's some of the local cows and a calf appreciating one another. A little murti of Srimati Radharani crawling. So we'll spend some more time in our evening sessions on Radharani's topics. So let's see if there's some discussion. Rupa Goswami ki jai. And that's just Act 1, Scene 1. The whole flow is quite amazing. Yes.
Had two questions. One is the Shakti, when you explained about Radharani's, the same living entity, the two living entities, but it's Krishna. Kind of confusion. That's Krishna, there are two living entities, but it's one, right?
There's two forms,
So two
but one
forms, but
entity.
one entity, yeah. So then he also explained that Hladini Shakti, which is transcendental bliss, which for Krishna. So I was thinking about, we also experience that bliss. Is that Krishna giving us as Radharani, because it's the same, Radharani and Krishna are the same. But however we experience, suppose, that transcendental bliss. maybe a glimpse, but how?
A glimpse,
Yeah,
a shadow,
shadow.
according to Nectar of Devotion.
Right. So that's was the first question. The second question
But
is,
it was your comment, not a question.
I was wondering how do we get that?
How do you get that? You have a big bucket, and you hold it out and you start crying. Please put some drops in my big bucket. You know, it's an eagerness for mercy, and to become eligible for that mercy. Of course, it doesn't mean material qualification. It's the eagerness for mercy. You know, in the language of Rupa Goswami, there's one price. You know the verse. It's lolium. It's very strong eagerness, greed. So that's the eligibility. You know, the beginning, Krishna can just give one some experience, realization, or a glimpse, a shadow glimpse. But that's all it is. That keeps us going. But the fullness of our capacity has everything to do with our eagerness for it. What do you think? Here's what you've heard this Krita Punya Punja phrase from Prabhupada's lectures. When Shukadev Goswami is speaking about the good fortune of the cowherd boys, he points to their eligibility as Krita Punya Punja, lifetimes and lifetimes of lifetimes, of not just material punya, but spiritual, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and that makes that eligibility. The verse, you familiar with the verse? There are those. There's three categories before the cowherd boys. There are yogis who are searching for the feature of Paramatma. There are pious people who worship the Supreme Person. They're devotees who worship the Supreme Person. The yogis who search for the Paramatma feature, and the materialists who just deride Krishna as an ordinary fellow. And the cowherd boys, they're playing with him. How many lifetimes? So the eligibility it's not just punch the clock kind of thing. It's eagerness and eagerness and eagerness and eagerness and eagerness and eagerness, and it just amplifies, just keeps going. And that's the eligibility. Eagerness. Mercy, Krishna can give us mercy without our eagerness. But he gives to those who have eagerness. Naturally.
But that glimpse also doesn't, once in a while it
flashes,
and goes away.
That's a glimpse is not the full thing.
And then the second one I had, Maharaj, is this four which you mentioned, the Radharani's appearance. Is that a revelation of each Acharya? And then how do which one is the right one?
No, it's not. There's no which one is the right one. Prabhupada's explanation is variety is the mother of enjoyment. You've heard that one. And so Krishna is the best of enjoyers. So he appears in different ways. Radharani appears in different ways for their enjoyment. It's not which is the right way or the best way. It's just their enjoyment. So if this is right, it doesn't mean that's wrong. If that's right, it doesn't mean this is wrong. There's different ways of performing pastimes or activities by Krishna or his devotees where there's varieties of enjoyment. You know examples, right? Should I give some examples? Brihad Bhagavatamrita is rich with examples. So sometime when you're enthusiastic to find out varieties of Krishna's enjoyment, you can read Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And one of the sections I like very much, well, one of them is when Krishna's departure from Mathura, from Vrindavan to Mathura. Another is Keshi. Another is Kalya. In subduing Keshi, there's an explanation. Then there's a list of so many other different examples from Sanatana Goswami's description of Keshi. So one way that Keshi is subdued, he isn't killed. Krishna just tames him and keeps him in a corral. And from time to time, the cowherd boys go for a horseback ride on Keshi's back. And I think with Kaliya, there's a list of 8 or 9 different examples of different outcomes. There's variegated pastimes with Kaliya. And sometimes it's described that Kaliya becomes a great devotee. Sometimes Kaliya appears in the spiritual world. And Krishna goes for rides on the back of Kaliya. He acts like Garuda as the carrier of Krishna. So there's variety. That's the point. There's examples, but the point is, enjoyment has variety. Supposing somebody's a good cook, one of the qualifications of a good cook is they cook differently, not always the same thing. I don't know if you've had. I travel sometimes. And some people, they make the same thing. But some people, they like to make something different.
Every revelation is very sweet.
Yes. Yes, because, and why? Because that's Krishna. Now, we should, so those who become connoisseurs of sweetness want to be sure that they're getting the real sweetness and not an imitation sweetness. Because some people have no discrimination. And that was one of the things I got irritated by yesterday evening, because the person kept asking varieties of imitation sweetness. You know, I had to put my foot down. They heard something and then they wanted to explore the something that just wasn't even, and it kept being, persistent about exploring something that just isn't even reality. So, and they're at it again today. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just wondering if you could speak something about the messaging that comes in our teachings about approaching Krishna through Radharani. And I've heard that many times. I don't think I have clarity on what that really means. Like, what does it mean to approach Krishna through Radharani?
There's different ways of explaining different dimensions of that topic. One of the really easy ones is one of Radharani's expansions is Bhakti Devi. And we approach Radharani through Bhakti Devi, and through Bhakti Devi we get Radha's mercy, and through Radha's mercy we get Krishna's mercy. Through Bhakti Devi. We just say through Bhakti Devi, period. But it implies Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Radharani. That's the easiest one. And, she's tender-hearted and merciful. So if one gets a favorable glance of Radharani, you have Krishna's favorable glance. You get the favorable glance of Radharani's associates. You get Radharani's favorable glance. And so on. There's a nice to explore it a little bit more. There's a nice section where Gopal Kumar is given some service directly by Radharani, and she's just merciful, and so her mercy goes to someone who she's directing her mercy to through Gopal Kumar. So there may be agents of Radharani to get Radharani's favor. And then, so that's a loving network. But if Radharani's favor is there, you've got Krishna's favor. It's just built in. It's part and parcel. Something else.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is related to
Volume. Go ahead, speak.
Yeah, question is about Radharani and in Ramayana Sita. Is any relation in Shastra?
Sure. You want to know what that relation is?
Yes, ma'am.
The details of which part of Vishnu Tattva, in other words, there's Shaktiman and there's Shaktis. So Sita, I don't have access to. Maybe Sri Vaishnava. Maybe there's somebody in the room that knows how Sri Vaishnava acharyas go into it with the various spiritual potencies of Narayana or Ram. In simple terms, however, so I don't have that exact precision kind of thing, but she's the Shakti of Shaktiman. So as Lakshmi is to Narayan, as Sita is to Ram, Radha is to Krishna, the Shakti of Shaktiman. Now, it doesn't mean that Krishna doesn't have other Shaktis, but the spiritual counterpart of Shaktiman is Srimati Radharani. From her, so many Shaktis expand. And Sita is in a similar position. But the feature of Shaktiman in the case of Krishna and the case of Ram are different. Similar but different. And so Sita is similar but different. Not 100% identical, but as the Shakti of Shaktiman. How's that? Is that what you're looking for?
Maharaj, in the verse that you quoted in the beginning, Radha Krishna
Pranaya Vikriti, yeah.
In that one, it says how Lord Radha and Krishna have combined again and are now Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yes.
And in other places, we oftentimes read it's described how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani, which here also in the translation. And then we also have Gadadhar Pandit. Just for my own clarification, is like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in terms of like Tattva, is he both Radha and Krishna, or is
Yes.
he Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani? And
Well, they're the same. I mean, you're making a distinction that I don't see. Maybe there is one and I don't see it, but I don't see a distinction. It's a way of two different ways of saying the same thing, as far as my limited capacity goes. One entity same one entity that's Radha Krishna, same one entity that's the personality of Godhead in the mood and the complexion of Radha. One entity. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Supreme Lord himself, Krishna, in the mood and the complexion of Radharani. It was one entity. So you want to go over it again and help me understand something I can't understand? It seems language. It doesn't seem tattva is different. It's just language is different.
So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in all aspects. It's both Radha and Krishna.
Yes.
Combined.
Yes. And the appearance is in a male form, but the complexion and the mood is a female, or specifically Radha. And then now you tossed it in there, so we'll touch on it. What's Gadadhar then? Well, Gadadhar is not Krishna in the mood and complexion of Radha. He is Radha. He is Radha. In a male form.
I had a second question in terms of the pastimes. You had mentioned Jambavan is advised to take.
It's complicated.
Yes. So in terms of those things, is the basic idea that when he takes Chandravali, she expands, and one form stays as Rukmini, and the other form comes to Vrindavan?
It doesn't say that specifically. He doesn't say it's not that either. It doesn't. So the implication of what you're saying is when Jambavan did what Jambavan did, one form stayed and another form separated from the one that stayed, and he brought the one that separated from the one that stayed. Doesn't say that. Doesn't mean that isn't what happened. You know, the transcendental technology of all this, I don't understand, for sure. But it's certainly possible. But it's not what it says, but it's certainly possible. And it gets, you know, this is just Act 1, Scene 1. The complexity continues. And the complexity builds on things that's Act 1, Scene 1. And, you know, here's Gargi saying, you know, maybe one day I'll understand this.
Because I also don't know, is Chandravali mentioned as not having parents? Does she also appear? Because
I mean, aside from Rupa Goswami's writings, if you don't go to Rupa Goswami, she has a father, Chandrabhanu. I don't know Chandrabhanu's wife's name. It's found somewhere. I don't know her name offhand, but you know, he's the mother and father and mother. She has father and mother. But then there's this parallel Leela that Rupa Goswami is disclosing through Purnamasi, and we just take her as an authority. We take Rupa Goswami as an authority. He says, Purnamasi says, and so that's it. And how do we understand it? Well, there's essences, and then from those essences, then you can start branching out. So from that essence, I'll just read it for the third time. And this document I'll send out, you know, when I get back. It has many other references that iterate the same thing. So the language is really important. And the language has a lot to do with how the translator translates the language, because it's all in Sanskrit to English. So here we go. I have heard from my father's mouth, that's Sandipani Muni, that although the gopis headed by Chandrabhanu's daughter Chandravali and the Dwarka queens headed by Bhishmaka's daughter Rukmini are expansions of the same spiritual potency. Nevertheless, their forms are separate and distinct. Now it is said that with the aid of Yogamaya potency, each gopi is identical with a specific queen, and each pair of gopi and queen is a single person in a single form. It must be so. Because she's heard it from some proper authority. She heard from her father, now she's heard from her grandmother. Must be so. I don't doubt their authority. Later I shall perhaps understand it. So it's Rupa Goswami speaking through Gargi like us. Okay, this and then this. Maybe perhaps someday I'll understand it. And then she continues to ask some more questions. It's very deep. Your mother has a question. Okay, let's do to her, then online. Just defer to the senior Vaishnavi here.
Maharaj, I was thinking that I was wondering that Radha Bhakti or Radha Bhav is considered is more the prerogative of a Rasika devotee, and that's something that Prabhupada really discouraged. And we see in the movement, many stalwarts also fell down due to that, or maybe due to something else, I don't know. But I was wondering, is that something, how should we take that? Because even Prabhupada, Shukadev Goswami, he doesn't talk about Radha in the Bhagavatam, and, I was just wondering.
I don't think you have to worry about it.
Yeah.
You're protected. But, on the one hand and on the other hand, one should be cautious and one should be, curious and enthusiastic. Therefore, exercise too much caution, too much on one side or too much on the other side, and you can be in a risky zone. There's a place for that mood, and one has to be very qualified to be situated properly in such a mood. And I don't know too many people that are qualified like that. So, in practical terms, you and I really don't have to worry about it. You and I are certainly not going to be imitators of something that's way above our heads. As our personal spiritual progress goes forward, there are literatures, safe literatures, that one can explore and understand more about such a topic, and go forward. With it's a little bit like. What Lord Chaitanya said to Raghunath Das Goswami, and who can be higher? He's the Prayojana Guru for our disciplic succession. But it started with, live your life in the worldly sense. Don't be an extremist. Don't be a madman, and inwardly cultivate attraction for Krishna and attachment to Krishna. So we do that, and then where that goes depends on, association and the topics that one becomes attracted to and goes further in it, because it's like an ocean that doesn't have a bottom. It just keeps going and going and going. One should become deeper. One should also be cautious. Err too much on one side or too much on the other side, and you won't progress nicely. So let's do online. Mike?
Keshava Madhava.
Okay.
Keshava Madhava Prabhu's question. Does the eagerness for Krishna's mercy come from the mercy of Radharani?
Well, is the question, does the eagerness for Krishna's mercy come from eagerness for Radharani's mercy? Is that the question?
Come from the mercy of Radharani.
Well, yes, there are different ways of saying the same thing. Here's a simpler way of saying the same thing. Mercy of Guru. And mercy of Guru can be a manifestation of Radharani's mercy. But, keeping it simple, because it's best to keep things simple, we seek the mercy of our spiritual master or masters and take guidance from them how we want to get closer to receiving Krishna's mercy. That's the good place to start. No, because it's Radhastami coming up, she certainly has a part to play, and we already touched on that one. There was Mukunda's question, I think, a little bit. Bhakti Devi is Radharani's expansion.
Surabhi Mataji's question. Since Bhakti Devi is an expansion of Srimati Radharani, are the other internal Shaktis of Lord Krishna, such as Kripa Shakti, also expansions of Srimati Radharani?
I've not read that anywhere. She's certainly merciful. So, to get Radha, this is a little bit this, Radha's mercy question, the previous question. She's merciful, but is that her expansion? Is Kripa Shakti her expansion? That Krishna has his potencies. We heard the three primary categories, the internal potency, Sandini, Sambit, Ladini. We can say it's Krishna's potency. Kripa Shakti is Krishna's potency. And what's the role of Radharani and Krishna's Swarup Shakti, or his internal potency of mercy? She's a bearer of it. But others may also be bearers of it. So I don't think it's sufficient to say Kripa Shakti is the expansion of Radharani. It's one of Krishna's potencies that she bears also, and others also bear.
This is from Amara Mataji. This fact is so fascinating that there is no difference between Krishna and Radharani, and she is the pleasure potency of Krishna. I'm curious, how do we understand or relate this fact in the context of different pastimes that Radharani performs, right from her appearance to her exclusive pastimes in Vrindavan, like providing shade to Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, or giving kheer to Srila Rupa Goswami on Srila Sanatan Goswami's birthday, or saving the jackal, etc.
To say that Radharani is Krishna's pleasure potency doesn't take away from her personality, her own initiative. In other words, she's not a machine moving by the will of the machine operator, Krishna. She's a personality. And her desire is Krishna's happiness. And so she wills according to ways with all variety of Krishna's happiness. Sometimes this, sometimes that, sometimes something else, which it results in Krishna's happiness. It's in nourishing Krishna's happiness. So that's her. She's a person. She's not just a machine or an energy. She's a person that has one desire. In the topmost, we heard Mahabhava degree. So I just step back from the question and, the lens through which you can look at Radharani properly is she's a person whose topmost desire is the topmost desire of Krishna. And she has all of the capacity to give the topmost desire and happiness to Krishna. And therefore many, 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 many personalities like her want to serve her. As she's the best of Krishna's lovers. She can serve Krishna and Krishna's pleasures best. So that's how others may regard her, and then her regard is exclusively topmost Krishna's pleasure potency. I'm not sure if I directly addressed the question. It's just meditation on Radharani's position and how we meditate on her. Yeah.
Amara Mataji's second part of the question is, how does Krishna enjoy these pastimes of Radharani with her or she being his own pleasure potency?
No problem. If you're Krishna, it's no problem. It's his pleasure potency, and he's enjoying his pleasure potency. He's enjoying being enjoyed by Krishna's as his pleasure potency. And then sometimes she talks back. And Krishna likes that. Most people don't. But Krishna likes it. That's it. Back over there. I think this will be our last question because of time.
Guru Maharaj, about that question on eagerness, does it come from Radharani's mercy?
What?
Does eagerness...
Eagerness come from Radharani's mercy.
And you mentioned...
Well, wait a minute. Wait before you go on to the next part. Eagerness comes from you. No, she may nourish that, but eagerness comes from you, or each of us.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify, Guru Maharaj. I was thinking it's a function of both, from our side.
But it starts from our side. Because let's say supposing somebody's not eager. Well, Radharani isn't being kind to them. That's the problem.
You also mentioned to Balaram Prasad Prabhu's question that sometimes even if we are not eager, Krishna will somehow shower the mercy. Same thing with spiritual master also. So I'm thinking it's like a going back and forth, like seeing little eagerness, they will shower the mercy and we'll...
There's relationship, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's about relationships, sure enough. Well
Just
done.
wanted to clarify that.
Well done, well done.
Thank you.
Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki. Good thing I brought a lot of Mahaprasadam from